This is my very first time to come to a C4 conference. Thank you, Bobby, for the wonderful introduction. I think the cause is great, the purpose is great. I see a bunch of people in here that I recognize that are on the road builder side of things. I've seen a few name tags around here that have been on some of the permits that I've signed and requested. And Amber told me not to say this, but I've seen a few name tags that are on some of the citations that I've received as well. So I'm glad to put a face with the name on some of those things also. Yeah. So that was all joking aside. I really think this is super important. I thought I would give everybody a little bit of an update, maybe about some of the things going on at the Turnpike Authority. There are always lots of things going on at OTA that are either going on in the background or things that are happening on the customer side. We are one of the few state agencies that not only has to execute law, execute statute, but also has to collect the money in order to be able to do that execution of statute. Puts us in a little bit of a unique position as it relates to customers. Turnpike Authority has about 1.1 million Pike Pass accounts, representing about 3.5 million Pike Passes. So somebody out there has a lot of Pike Passes, right? And I'll tell you who they are. They're truck drivers and trucking companies. Some of those trucking companies have hundreds of Pike Passes. Some of those trucking companies pay tens of thousands of dollars a month on their Pike Pass bill. We're in the same bracket security-wise as Walmart as it relates to credit card data and transactions. So there's a lot of things that go on that maybe this group doesn't necessarily even think about. In addition to that, we've also taken on the Turnpike's most forward-looking, longest-term, long-range transportation plan to build some new roads, and I know that's what gets a lot of attention, but also to make some major improvements on some existing infrastructure to both replace pavement, widen some existing infrastructure to make room for additional capacity. And the reason for all of these things, the main reason, is safety, right? I mean, I heard several presenters, Jessica that was up here a minute ago, Amber talked about safety. Saw a 32-foot extension ladder that I would not even get near. I'd look off in that hole and then I'd have walked away. That'd have been as close as you'd have got me. 32 feet extension ladder, not 275 pounds, we're not doing that. I'm just trying to be a little bit funny here. But the safety is our number one deal, and that's what's driving all of this program. The oldest turnpike in Oklahoma, the first 4-lane divided highway, is in need of a major facelift. A number of years ago, about 30 years ago, the major facelift that took place on the Turner Turnpike was the building of that concrete wall. Now, I know there are a lot of people in here that don't drive all over the highway or don't drive all over Oklahoma like some of us do, but we still have a grass median on the south end of the Indian Nation Turnpike. Now, it's got a contract that's under construction right now. That'll be the last section. It'll have a cable barrier there, much needed improvement. But can you imagine the Turner Turnpike without a center wall? If you haven't driven the narrow 4-lane section lately, look at how many black marks are on that wall. Those are all crossover accidents that could have occurred. So that's a major safety improvement. The next one is trying to get it wider. When the Turner Turnpike was built, there were no interstate standards. There wasn't a highway over 65 miles an hour, not in America at the time. So now we have better, higher standards of safety that we're trying to implement. The thing that gets all the news are the new alignments down in Norman, and there's probably somebody in here from Norman, and there's probably some people that maybe don't understand exactly why we're building that toll road down there. So first off, it's very clear in statute that the Turnpike Authority was asked in the 1980s to start building a loop around Oklahoma City and Tulsa. It's very clear. We started that in the late 80s. In 1989, we sold bonds and built the first leg of the Kilpatrick. Then we built the next leg of the Kilpatrick in the late 90s. In 99, we sold some bonds, finished that about, I think, 2001, 2002. Most recently, as part of the Driving Forward program, we started in 2015 and built the Southwest Extension and the Kickapoo Turnpike in eastern Oklahoma County. That Kickapoo Turnpike was never supposed to be that far east, but we waited too long. Development happened out past Choctaw, and there were just too many houses going to be impacted if we'd built it any miles west of its current alignment where it ended up getting built. So that's where we ended up. Through our environmental studies and through getting some of the permits, we realized that we had a very challenging crossing of the then North Canadian River, now the Oklahoma River. And that all had to do with some cultural resource issues that were in that area. So that alignment kind of snakes between I-44 and I-40. The Turnpike Authority has always known that we were going to need to build the south leg, the south half of that loop, between basically between Mustang someplace over to east of Tinker Field as it's defined in statute, and that's what we've announced as part of this plan. Only instead of announcing the next 3 or 4 years of Turnpike expansion, we said, hey, we're going to do it all, and we are going to build it over the course of the next 15 years. That's called transparency, as a government agency, telling people what you're going to do for the next 15, 20 years, 10 years. The longer you project that into the future, the more transparent that you are being. What we see in traffic numbers, traffic growth on I-35 is crazy. I don't know if there's anybody in here who will correct the number that I will say, but in 2019, the number of accidents happening between the rivers, between the South Canadian and North Canadian, now known as the Oklahoma River, there were about 4.5 accidents every day. Now I went back through the data because that seemed like a large number. I think it's 26 miles, 4.5 accidents per day. There are days where there are no accidents, very few. There are lots of days where there are lots of accidents, 14, 11 accidents in a day. Sometimes that happens as a part of snow and ice, lots of reasons for that. And why does that occur? It's because we're trying to cram too many people that are paying attention to too many other things, and I'll hold this up for a second because we've all done it, looked at a cell phone while we were driving, and cause an accident. The other thing that happens, for whatever reason, you can drive most roads in Oklahoma, and if somebody stopped on the shoulder changing a flat, you drive by them or you get over, you slow down a little bit. For whatever reason on I-35, when somebody's pulled over fixing a flat, everybody stops in the highway, looks at it, and rubbernecks as they accelerate by it fast. We've all seen that. That causes accidents in the backup and in the queue. So we know that by providing an alternative route, anytime there's an alternative way to get someplace, maybe it may not be faster the direction that you're trying to get, but somebody else on the road might get over, take the exit, take the turnpike to get around Oklahoma City. And experience tells us with the Kilpatrick that after we build something like that, not a few people use it, but tens of thousands of people will use an alternative route like that. Kilpatrick up by Quail Springs Mall on a day like today, nice beautiful day in the fall, we'll see somewhere around 90, 95,000 cars today. Sunday it'll be somewhere in the 60 to 65,000 cars just in that little segment, but those numbers are growing huge, 10% every year. 10% every year out on the west side of the Kilpatrick. That's what we've seen just here recently. I mean, it's just insane. Where you see houses that are being developed, being built, and areas that are being developed, that just contributes to additional traffic on our network. And our job is not to decide where development occurs. We're just trying to facilitate and make our highway system safer in the state. Department of Transportation has a couple challenges that we try to fulfill. Number one is there is a line in statute and in their commission rules that restricts how many miles of highway, centerline miles of highway, ODOT can operate and maintain. They can't build a bigger infrastructure without taking some highway miles off. Anybody in here want to take the highway that you routinely drive and we'll just give it to the county or municipality, they'll probably take pretty good care of it. The answer is no. You just assume the state do snow and ice operations and keep up and maintain those facilities, right? So nobody wants to turn anything from highway into a city street or county road. So it really restricts ODOT's ability to go out and build new. They are able to expand, able to add lanes, able to improve interchanges. Building alternative routes is not in their list of abilities now. Director Gatz the other day used a couple of numbers that I think are worth saying. The transportation, the highway tax-supported infrastructure is $100 billion asset to the state of Oklahoma, the most expensive, the most valuable thing that Oklahoma possesses is this transportation infrastructure. The department has a $30 billion backlog of projects that if they could do them, they would do them right now today, and the entire state network would be up to snuff, up to par, in fair or good condition. And they have an 8-year construction work plan that has a little over $1 billion a year in it. So they're going to do $1 billion of work this year. They've got $30 billion they need to do. They're getting a little bit further behind every year, and that's ODOT's issue and ODOT's problem, and they're actively working on it. They don't have the ability to build additional infrastructure. I saw a statistic also the other day that put Oklahoma in the top 5 states that have grown percentage-wise by population. As we grow in our state, more people moving in, more houses being built, more multi-unit housing and apartments, more all sorts of things like that. All of those come with either a garage that's being built or a parking lot. And as we add additional people into our state, and Texas is bleeding into Oklahoma, if you haven't seen that, go down to one of our southern communities and take a look at it. Our infrastructure has to grow. So we're building some alternative alignments. Most recently, you may have seen in the news some of the stuff that we've been discussing with the city of Norman. I just want to go through that and give you a full fact check so that when you watch the news and you get our 30-second clip, you get the full 5-minute story, and I'll give that to you really quick. Turnpike Authority, again, authorized in statute 1989 to build these turnpikes, or in the late 80s, a couple different lines of statute, but we made this announcement late 2021 that we're going to look at a long-range plan. We showed a map in February 2022. As a part of that map, it showed these new alignments in and around Norman, and immediately, of course, if the government, me being government, draws a line over your house, you're going to be aggravated about that. I totally understand and totally get that. Our normal flow of events is that within 5 or 6 months, we're doing active work to design those projects, and then we can provide some certainty to you whether your house is actually impacted. We can actually make an offer on the property. Those types of things start to move forward. This was a little bit different. We had a lawsuit, which is not unusual. What was unusual about the lawsuit is that it didn't make it to the Supreme Court in the normal fashion that has happened in the past. The Driving Forward program was 3 months. The Gilcrease Turnpike on the west side of Tulsa was 4 months. This particular program was 14 months. So we had an unanticipated 10-month delay right off the bat. During those delays and immediately before them and after them, we met with Norman City officials. We met with Moore, Newcastle, Cleveland County, Oklahoma County, City of Oklahoma City, Newcastle, I already said Newcastle, Tuttle, Blanchard, and I could name a few others, to discuss the improvements that were going to occur and to discuss improvements that they might need to their local infrastructure to support a new turnpike coming through. In those discussions with Norman, they said, absolutely, we would like to have frontage roads. We want as many interchanges as we can have. This is going to help our community stay growing to the north and near I-35 and not grow to the east toward Lake Thunderbird and all of the things that they're trying to protect on the eastern side of Norman. And we said, sure, we understand all of that, specifically talking here about the east-west portion. And in that discussion, they said, well, what about environmental things? That's what I'm trying to get back to, environmental stuff here. And we said, hey, we're all in. We don't only want to do what's required to do for mitigation. We want to go, and we've used this term a lot, and I'm looking at a few people who've heard me say it, above and beyond. Now, there are a lot of people who go, well, if you go above and beyond, you're setting some precedent. And I'm telling you, we haven't built a brand new 4-lane turnpike with frontage roads and interchanges through a relatively urban area in ever. I don't think we've done that in ever. So because we haven't done that ever, it's important to treat this like a project we've never done before. And that includes being pretty open-minded to a lot of ideas. We've had some recent meetings with Amber and her team and some people that she's put together to talk about things that aren't required, but maybe are just being good stewards of the property that we own, the infrastructure that we operate and maintain. And I think, when something is required, I can sell that to my board. When something is above and beyond, I also think that there's a way that our board will understand the benefit of doing that, whether it be bat structures, bat roofs, whether it be some of the things we've talked about as far as stormwater pollution prevention things like BMPs, like forested areas, like planting trees, like planting certain grasses, like growing certain grasses, like changing how we mow our right-of-ways. All of these things are things that we should be open to and talking about. So I've been working really closely with Amber over the course of the last, well, my entire career, her entire career. I'm older, but just barely. But I don't think anybody's paying attention anymore, Amber, so nobody caught that. But we've been working really close over the course of the last couple of years talking about this project in particular. And the Norman city officials said, yeah, we're all in. We want some wetlands. We want to do some things. We don't just want you to go buy wetland credits. We want you to do some on-site mitigation that we will take a look at being able to operate and maintain. And we said, this sounds great. You know, it's a great partnership. Started proposing that, and Norman has a very organized group of individuals that are anti. And I didn't say anti-turnpike, I just said anti, and I'm just going to leave it right there. They're against a lot of things. And because of that, it has made it a really unique challenge for us to work with the Norman City Council. They have presented a couple of resolutions. A resolution is just the City Council saying, hey, city staff, let's go work with the turnpike. Let's make this the best we can make it. And so far, the city's been unable to pass that type of resolution. We did give them a deadline. You have to have a deadline. It's a big program. You can't just wait, because waiting is, if you're a protester, that's a win for them to get the turnpike to continue to wait. So we've started moving forward last year after the Oklahoma Supreme Court, which is the highest court judicial leg in our state, said, turnpike, you can go build those. You're authorized to go do it. We sold bonds a year ago this week. We priced bonds a year ago this week. And we started work on these turnpikes this last year. We've done lots of design, and we were coming up on 60% plans. And because Norman had been a part of the lawsuit, and because we knew they had some challenges, we said, hey, we probably ought to get that resolution in place where you're officially okay with us building interchanges, which will add traffic to your infrastructure, and these frontage roads, which will add future maintenance responsibility. You don't want the Turnpike Authority maintaining a frontage road, county road, or city street. Something that's on their book should be on their book. They should be taking care of the driveway entrances and the mowing and those kind of things. And so that's all this agreement was about, was we're going to build a turnpike as of that Oklahoma Supreme Court opinion. We are going to build a turnpike. I'm putting a period there. That's it. Now, Norman, what do you want it to look like? Moore, what do you want it to look like? Newcastle, what do you want it to look like? What can we do while we're here that will interface best with you? We have had great discussions with all of those cities, but Norman has been unable to deliver a resolution to move forward with anything contractual with the turnpike. So as of the end of August, when they rejected all of those things, we took those things out, which as a transportation person, I know that their system and our system and the ODOT system will interact the best with more interchanges and more access points. I know that Norman won't have to develop further to the east if they have an entire corridor that's on the north side of Norman to build along. I know that that's the truth. I know that that's a fact. Everybody I've talked to with Norman understands that, but they were unable to do a resolution. Most recently, Tuesday this week, they decided to bring another resolution in front of the city council, and then they postponed it. Again, we kind of gave them a deadline of August, and we missed the deadline. Now here we are in October, and they've postponed this resolution. We have to be able to buy property to build this turnpike, okay? And in order to do that, if you've had a line drawn either at or near your property, you need some certainty in the next stages of your life. You can't keep dragging Oklahomans, our neighbors, through this. Let's make a decision and move on. So we have made the decision. Last night I made a tough phone call to the city manager in Norman. We play a little phone tag, which is not unusual, and told him that we weren't going to be able to participate, any further. We look forward to working with the city when they can pass a resolution, but we just don't see a path forward with frontage roads and interchanges. Bad news. Good news. Good news, it's less environmental impact, less right-of-way that's necessary. Bad news, it's less transportation access to and from the city streets. I think that's a bad deal for the future in that area. But I also understand that it's the city council's want and desire. We are not forcing this, we're not pushing it. We wanted to give every opportunity. We wanted to try as hard as their city officials wanted us to, which is why we've stayed in the game so long, even offered them a second chance a couple months after our deadline. We just didn't make it. So what you're going to see now is over the course of the next 2 months, we're going to be turning in these and revamping the 60% plans, right, LaDan? As soon as those plans come in here between now and Christmas, we'll strike our right-of-way line, come up with the necessary properties that are going to be necessary, and we'll finally, after 2 years, be able to, or going on 3 years, be able to communicate with these property owners the necessary right-of-way take that the turnpike will need. We get a little bit of a black eye because people use the two words, eminent domain. It's the last resort, guys. It's one of the most serious things we do. At times, the most serious thing we do is negotiate property acquisition. It's tough. I own property. Probably everybody in here either owns a house or something, and you don't want to lose that. You don't want to be forced to sell it. You don't want to sell it unexpectedly, regardless of the situation. And that's what this is. This is an unexpected situation for these people. So we understand that. We negotiate hard. We challenge our folks to always do the right thing. So far, we've had none of the properties have gone that direction to this moment. We've been able to settle 14 acquisitions so far. We've got several hundred more to do, but we've done 14 so far, negotiated settlements. Last night I saw that one of the businesses that we recently purchased over near Newcastle is having a turnpike blowout sale. And when I first saw that, I thought, what in the world's a turnpike blowout sale? We need to make sure and define that. Well, that's a countertop. They sell granite and countertops. So if you're in the market down by Newcastle, they are selling countertops, and they got a great deal because we already paid them for the countertops, and now they're getting to sell them again. They got to be cheap. I don't know what the prices are. But yeah, we take that super serious. Our footprint is going to be greatly reduced from what we've talked about, Amber, over the course of the last couple of years. That's a positive thing in one aspect. It's also a negative thing in that we had some big plans to do kind of some big things along the corridor, and I think there's still going to be plenty of opportunity for us to do that. May or may not be in Norman. We look forward to working with Norman. We hold no grudges. This wasn't a bad deal. This was what Norman wanted, right? That's how I've taken the angle that we've taken on it. We may be doing some cool things and more, though, and in Oklahoma City and in Cleveland County over the course of the next couple of years. So we're excited about it. We know there's going to be, for the environmental DEQ folks that are in the room, this is going to be a big undertaking. If you've worked with us in the past, you realize we're motivated by schedule and time to try to hurry and get some things done. We are pushing our contractors, and I know there's some contractors in here too, we are pushing our contractors to build projects monolithically so that while you're maybe pushing some topsoil out of the way a mile down the road, maybe you're laying some sod behind you and getting the project wrapped up and cleaned up so we don't run into some of those issues. We are pushing for that. It's really difficult. It's a challenge to write that into a contract. When we want to allow the contractor folks that are in the room all the latitude to give us a low bid, a project that's affordable, and for them to be able to have a project that's buildable and efficient and leaves room for them to make profit on their side. So that's a difficult balance to difficult to balance. And we will be on one side of that all the time. And we have charged LaDan, who was up here speaking earlier, with managing that access program. She's going to do a great job. She already is doing a great job managing that. But we've got somewhere around, we're going to end up with 100 and what projects altogether, LaDan? For the whole program. like 126 projects or something like that. We've got 56 design that's going to be close, right? We don't have to be right on, but 56 or so design contracts that are ongoing with consultants. It's going to be a big program. We're going to make a big impact to a lot of people that are in this room's lives just through your work, but also through the things that happen after work. Imagine those of you that are from the northern or eastern part of the state being able to get to Norman 40 minutes faster. Imagine 30 minutes faster, 40 minutes on a congested day, 30 minutes just on a regular day, being able to take the Kickapoo Turnpike straight down, get off and head into Norman. There are so many of these training programs and convention centers that are down in that area that are so difficult to get to. Several times I've had a conference that was going on at Embassy Suites. That's near the TIF district where they're talking about building a new arena. And you can't get there. I mean, it's a challenge. You got to really plan your drive ahead of time. You better not map it before you go to bed and think, oh, it's 30 minutes. It ain't 30 minutes in the morning when it's rush hour. It's just a challenge. It's the same thing with a lot of the university events. I don't attend very many of those. I usually am driving up to this community, which I made a couple phone calls on my way here this morning. They said, what are you doing today? I said, I'm heading to God's country. And they said, so you're headed to Norman? I said, no. So I do want to pause there for a second, and I know that I just kind of went through the Access program. I would encourage you to look for updates on accessoklahoma.com. LaDan is doing it, and Jeff are doing a great job of lining out the construction lettings that are coming in the future. We let our projects obviously through ODOT, so we've got some deliverables that are coming. We continue to work with our environmental partners mostly and directly through my really good friend Amber and her team. But if somebody has ideas, I would tell you to get them to Amber, because we're all ears and we're listening to things that we could do to really make this a very unique project and something that all of us in this room, and I want the owners, the DOT and the Turnpike folks that are here, the contractor folks that are here, and the regulatory folks and permitting folks that are here, I want you all to be proud of what we're about to do. I really do. And so if we're doing something that's not right, or you don't think is right, or there's opportunity for us to do something better, we want to know about it. And that's why LaDan and Jeff are here, and Amber, Jessica's part of the team doing some of the third-party oversight during construction. So we're excited to be a part of this big program, and look for any kind of feedback. And with that, I will take some questions about anything. Anybody need a pike pass? I got some out in the car. Anything? All right, well, thank you guys. Oh, I got a question. Yes, sir.
There was something in the paper maybe a year ago about how much money was being lost because of non-readable tags, tribal tags, those kinds of things with the bike pass. How's that stand today?
It's a great question. I think we're working on right now on some media requests to get some more of that information out. So the question that was asked was about, basically our cashless conversion, I think was the main deal, and how much losses do we have and where's that money going. It's getting better every day, I'll tell you that. Let me back up for a second and tell you why we're doing that. The Turnpike Authority are about half of all of our accidents in the past, prior to going cashless, happened in toll zones. Not very many of those were very bad. Some of them were horrific, and I do define horrific. I don't want to define it, but I mean, it was really bad. We've had fatalities in toll zones just because we're trying to get $1.35 from somebody or $2, and there's a lot going on with 70-mile-an-hour traffic. Somebody stopped, and a person sitting in a toll booth. There's a lot going on there, and we've tried to sign it. We get too many signs, take some signs down, sign it again. We've done all kinds of things. Nothing fixes that like getting all that out of the way and letting people drive. People struggle enough to drive today. So we've been going cashless. That has greatly reduced accidents. We only have 2 turnpikes that are still taking cash. That's the Will Rogers Turnpike in northeastern Oklahoma, that portion of I-44 from Tulsa, or basically from Catoosa to Joplin. And then we have 1 cash booth at McAllister just south of 69 on the Indian Nation Turnpike. Everything else has been converted to cashless. My report that I give is that best I can tell, we've had 0 accidents due to tolling since we've converted to cashless, okay? So that's why we're doing it. So now let's talk about, there's losses, there's costs to making this conversion, and then there are losses because it's difficult to let somebody drive by at 75, 80, 85, and I know how some of you drive, 90 miles an hour, and then get you to pay a bill later after I send you a bill. So the way that cashless deal works, it's still best to have a Pike Pass. 90% of our traffic last month, 90% of our transactions were a Pike Pass or interoperable toll tag, 90%. So that means 90% of the time we're getting the money right off the top. So if you're Walmart or you're a merchant of any kind, 90% of your people automatically pay as soon as they walk out of the store. That is great. Now we got to talk about that 10%, right? That's currently cash or plate pay. Of that 10%, we collect about 67 to 70% of it, okay? Now we charge double. And the reason we charge double for the plate pay is because we know we're going to collect less of it. So it's like having to mark up your product because of some theft, right? Only this isn't really theft. This just it's people who don't pay for lots of reasons. But you have some people who don't pay. So we're collecting about 67% of that. Financially, on the accounting side, we call it 55%, and then when we get extra, when we actually account for more money at the end of the year, that's a positive. But so we mark it down. There's costs to collect. I have to take a picture. It's different equipment. I have to run that picture through a reader that says, okay, it's Oklahoma license plate, it's ABC 123. Then we have to look you up, which in Oklahoma we do that for free, in Texas we do that for free, in Colorado we do that for free. In other states we have to pay for the lookup, and that's just through a third-party vendor. It's like 60 cents or something per lookup, so sometimes I got to pay for that. Then after I pay for the lookup, I have to print an invoice, put your name and your address on it, put it in an envelope. A stamp is, somebody help me here, 75, 76 cents, I think. Something, I remember when stamps were like 19 cents or 17 cents, I think. So stamps are expensive. You gotta put a stamp on it. Then I gotta mail it to you. And then usually you don't pay. I mean, that's typical. You know, you mail me a bill, I only read the mail sometimes for a few weeks, right? So sometimes we end up mailing a second bill, another stamp, another print, another envelope. And so all of those are additional costs, so that has been a challenge. The misreads, or the ones that we don't end up getting to bill, fall into 3 categories, okay? They have in the past have been paper plates. That was corrected as of September 1st. Now if you buy a vehicle from a new or used car dealer, and I want to thank, if you're paying attention to who is in the legislature, I want to thank Senator Haste and very specifically Pro Tem Greg Treat that authored those bills and really worked together on the language to let it be where when you buy a vehicle from a new or used car dealer and they give you that piece of paper to put it in as a license plate or tape on your back glass, now it has numbers that we can bill you off of. We can look up and bill. So that's been huge. That just took that out of the way. So now we got really 2 categories that are the ones that, you know, there's still paper plates from other states. You know, most of our paper plates are in Oklahoma, so most of the problem's been fixed. But really the other 2 categories are we don't have access to the lookup, and that fits in with Canadian, Mexican, you know, South American countries that drive through Oklahoma, which happen every day, by the way. Canadian license plates, which are happening 100 times since I've been up here, and tribal plates, which happen thousands of times since I've been up here. So we've been working through some of those issues. We're working right now with the tribes. We have met with them multiple times over the course of the last year and a half, trying to address the situation with them. There are things that we're going to work through the legislature on, because the legislature has the ability to allow, by statute, to allow the Department of Public Safety to share some of that address information with us so that we could bill most of the tribes using that. So that would check that box. We're going to work on that this next year. And then the second category, which is an even bigger category than the sovereign nation, you know, ones we can't look up issue. The other one is can't see the plate. That happens for lots of reasons. People have heard me say, or at least I've been quoted in the newspaper as saying, well, if somebody's got their tailgate down, and then, of course, people start putting their tailgates down. But, you know, we usually can see around the tailgate, by the way. But usually there's something else that's blocking the plate, whether it be one that is very common, and you've seen it before, is somebody has a hitch and haul on the back or something that carries either a wheelchair, a stroller, bicycle, something on the back of a car. That's a blocked plate that we can't always get a good image of and see. Pulling a trailer of some sort that we can't see. The only way to fix that is to do what Texas and actually all but 13 other states have done, and that is put a front license plate on a vehicle. We're going to work on that over the course of the next several years, and I think 5 or 6 years from now, public safety, your vehicle gets stolen, it has a better chance of being found if it has a front license plate. Crimes happen, you have a better chance of getting a license plate read if you can see something that's on the front. So, it doubles that opportunity. So there'll be, at least in Oklahoma, work toward getting a front-facing license plate. We're not doing that right now. We just got new license plates were issued this year, so everybody's getting what they're going to have for the next 5 years on their vehicle. So we're not getting involved in that piece, but it is going well. It is going as predicted, as planned. We knew we were going to have some of these issues, and we're continuing to just try to work through them. That's a long answer, but I don't want to leave any of that left untouched because it's really important information. Anybody got any other question while I'm up here? Thank you guys very much.